Hi guys, James here, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Canon 55mm FL lens on my Sony A7R II body. I don't usually do product reviews, but I found it particularly hard to find information on this lens being used on Sony bodies, so I thought I'd share my unscientific findings. I've tried to split this review into sections, starting with a lens overview. I picked up this lens on eBay for around £200. Now, as you can see on the close-up here, there's a switch on the front of the lens labelled A and M. This is an aperture toggle switch, so it switches between your designated value and wide open at f1.2. The filter thread size for the lens is 58mm, and the minimum focus distance is 48cm. The lens is an all-metal construction, weighing 550 grams with an adapter, which is a bit front-heavy on the A7R II, to be honest. In this section, I'm going to be comparing two mount adapters and giving you my opinion on which one is better. There's no conversion needed for either of these adapters, they just clip on. I tried two different mount adapters with this lens for reasons which I'll explain later. We got one from a company called Fokker and one from a company called K&F. Both are really well built and approximately £20. The main difference between them is actually the weight. You can see here the K&F adapter weighs in 105 grams. The K&F adapter actually has some plastic parts while the Fokker is pure metal. They both mount really nicely and work well. The Fokker adapter weighs in at 55 grams, so not really a difficult decision when choosing between the two. Now here's just a photo showing how the adapter looks when mounted on the lens correctly. I was actually a little bit puzzled the first time I tried to mount this lens, so I've dedicated a section to it right here. There's a silver locking ring on the rear of the lens. When I got my copy, it was very, very stiff. It does twist eventually, but you might have to give it a good nudge. So if you take a look at the rear of your adapter, you'll see teeth which line up with the rear of the lens. And there's also a locking switch shown here, which needs to be set to open. The silver locking ring has a red dot. It needs to be turned to the top of the lens for this to begin, as shown from this angle. You'll need to press the adapter against the rear of the lens as shown, and twist the silver ring nice and tight counterclockwise from the rear until it locks. Then once that's nice and tight, you just lock the adapter. And here's just another view of what's happening when you lock the adapter, just to make sure you've done it right. Now I've just taken some quick photos on my phone just to show how big the lens is on my A7R II body. And yes, that is a Panasonic camera strap on my Sony body, well spotted. In this section, I'm just going to go over the ergonomics of the lens and how I felt using it over the past couple of months. The focus ring has a really nice weight to it, very similar to a Voigtlander lens I've used in the past. It does take quite a while to get from minimum focus distance to infinity, so bear that in mind. The aperture ring is a clicked aperture ring. It has a hidden f1.4 marker, which is just labelled as a dot on the top of the lens. And I've got no concerns about its reliability at this stage. In this section, I'm just going to do some really basic testing for distortion, vignetting, etc. So I can see straight off the bat there's some barrel distortion and vignetting at f1.2. By f2.8 the vignette reduces dramatically and doesn't really get much better at f4 onwards. Now this is the area which the lens really lets me down. I think it's got a lot of forgivable flaws, but this one really has got on my nerves. This lens is very, very prone to flaring, even quite widely off axis. I thought at first it might have been reflections from the inside of the adapter, which is the reason why I tried two adapters, but unfortunately, although both have different designs, they produce the same results. I've tested this out on two copies of the lens and both produce the same results. Unfortunately, at f1.2 you're just going to get a lot of contrast loss with bright light sources. Things may improve with a lens hood, but I haven't tried one myself yet. Okay, so another little issue with this lens is you do get a bit of colour fringing around high contrast areas. I've got a close-up here, shows a fair amount of green fringing. It is a little bit of an issue, but nothing major. At f1.2 you get some lovely bokeh out of the lens. It's round in the middle, cat's eyes towards the edge of the frame. As you stop down you get some lovely sun stars. Okay, we've got a basic sharpness test here, just showing you how sharp the lens is before and after editing. Then again step down to f2.8. And then also compared to a 50mm Sony macro lens, which is quite sharp across the frame. The Canon fares pretty well for an old lens, but I wish it was just a hair sharper, wide open. Okay, in this section I've got some before and after photos from my personal collection, and it's really for you to judge for yourself and make your own mind up on whether this lens is the right lens for you. Oh, and please bear in mind, I am by no means a professional, I just take photos as a hobby. If you are watching this review hoping to see some video shots using the lens, you'll be happy to know that all the clips that I've used in this video were filmed on the 55mm FL. My A7R II was set to Super 35 mode, and the close-up shots utilised a macro tube. Well, if you're still watching by now, it means my voice hasn't bored you to death, shockingly, so I'll give you my final thoughts and conclusion. I've been using the lens for about 3 months now, so I like to think I've got a fair representation of what it can produce. It's definitely a character lens. I think it really excels at portraits, gives you some really interesting photos with some very interesting bokeh. It's obviously a really good performer in low light, although it suffers really badly from flaring, which is my major gripe with the lens. I can't recommend the lens for anything to do with fast-moving subjects. The focus ring is just too heavy, it's too well weighted. One thing I haven't tested the lens for is astrophotography. That's something I'd actually like to do in the future. If you follow me on Instagram, I'm sure you'll find one posted up eventually. Or if you just want to follow the hashtag Canon 55mm FL. Overall, for £200, I think you're getting a decent lens. It's certainly not perfect, but it can also produce some really nice results under the right scenarios. If you are thinking about picking up one of these lenses and you do have the ability to view it in person, I suggest just checking for dust particles trapped inside the lens. It's easy to do, just open the aperture nice and wide and shine a light through front to back. All the sample images that you've just seen I'm going to link below, where you can download them as RAW files so you can have a little mess for yourself, see what you think of the files. And finally, if you guys have any questions, comments or concerns, feel free to post them in the comments section below and I will try my best to get back to you. Thanks for watching.